After a strange object was seen falling from the sky in Las Vegas, the police got a strange call and eyewitness testimonies claimed to have seen aliens running around in their backyard. But what do the body language and most importantly word choice tell us about what really happened? Was this really an alien sighting or is there more to the story? Let's jump right in. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in body language analysis and criminal interrogation, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. This week, a very special guest and I are looking at a UFO sighting in Las Vegas. So I'm going to give you really quickly the events and what happened, and then I'm going to bring my guest in and we are going to be looking at the body language, but most importantly, the word choice of the 911 call and what it reflects in terms of what really may have happened. So a couple of days ago, a news report went massively viral online, getting millions of views. Although the event happened about a month ago, it just hit the news cycle a couple of days ago. So the event happened in early May in Las Vegas, where the police got a phone call from a guy who was working with his brother and his father in their backyard, and he alleges that they saw something crash land, and moments later, it's a little unclear how much later, but later saw aliens in their backyard. One of them was inside what he describes to be a piece of equipment. Later it's found out that he was talking about a front loader construction truck, and the alien was in there, and another alien was standing outside the truck looking at him. Police arrived on site about half an hour after the phone call was placed, and we get a little bit of that footage. There really isn't much to look at, but police did not find any evidence of vessels or beings on that property. Now, although nobody besides the members of this family could corroborate seeing aliens, they were not the only ones who witnessed something falling out of the sky. There is body cam footage from that same night of something falling from the sky, and there is footage from a camera where we hear a loud crash. Now, typically on the channel, we look at footage of things where we can look at the body language, because I've spent a heck of a lot of time studying the way we move and what it might reveal about stress or emotions or the way someone is feeling or thinking. In this case, we don't have a whole ton of footage. There's certainly a bit, but the main thing we're looking at here today is the context around all of this, as well as that phone call. A big part of what I do with behavioral analysis is to pay attention to what's said and how it's said. So we're gonna dive a lot into that. But I also wanted someone to chime in here who has a lot of experience with law enforcement and statement analysis, and who has heard a lot of 911 calls, who can help us analyze that as well. So I've brought in a very special guest. All right, my very exciting guest today is the author of the book, Understanding Body Language, one of my absolute favorites. He trains law enforcement and military in interrogation and body language, and he is the creator of the #1 selling online body language course, bodylanguagetactics.com. Here he is, my friend, Scott Rouse.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be here, because we talk on the phone all the time and text and stuff. But I really appreciate it, man, because this is my favorite body language channel. We always, as you know, because you know all of us in the behavior panel, we're all the time talking about you and
back and forth. It's so funny because, like, you know, I'll get people say to me something like, hey, those panel guys said something that you said, or they'll tell me the opposite, like, oh, you said something they already said. And I'm like, yeah, we're all friends. We talk about this stuff.
Yeah, we know. We all talked about that.
Yeah,
hey,
yeah, it's based on like, we studied the same stuff. We talk about this.
Hey, listen, before we go on, I appreciate the intro. It's really good. But can we make a couple of tweaks on that?
My guest today wrote a book, but more importantly, he is the smartest and best looking member of the behavior panel, definitely both smarter and better looking than Chase Hughes. Please welcome Scott Rouse.
Now piecing together the sequence of events has been kind of tricky, in part because the primary witnesses have been almost as elusive as the beings they say they encountered.
Okay, what's going on over there?
Okay, lady. Me, my dad, and my brother, we're working on a truck in our backyard, and we have a big lot outside, right? Correct?
Okay.
We were working, and we just see in a corner of our eye something fall down from the sky, and it was with light. And when I hit down, it was like a big impact, and we felt it. We felt like an energy, and then we hear like a lot of footsteps near us, and then we have a big equipment, and we see, and there's like an 8-foot person beside it, and another one's inside, and it has big eyes and it's looking at us, and it's still there.
I'm going to leave a link in the description to the Behavior Panel channel. This is a body language channel. Scott, you're part of this channel. You guys discuss body language, lie detection, and we're all very clear, whether it's on this channel or the panel, that lie detection is not an exact science. There's a lot that goes into it. There isn't a single thing you could see that makes you go, that person's lying. However, what's really interesting to me is that research has shown that we are intuitively more effective at detecting deception by hearing more than seeing. So we get a lot of clues and cues in what people say. And so, yes, there's a handicap here. We can't see this guy telling this story or calling the cops, and that might give us extra clues, but there's certainly some stuff happening with the statements and what he's saying that make me curious. And Scott, I want to start with this. You work with law enforcement. You've heard endless police phone calls. How often would you say you've heard a phone call where someone calls the police where something's happening now? There's a burglar, there's a something in their house, on their property, and they start that conversation by describing at great length the details of their backyard and what they were doing and who they were with. How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, that's a heads up. That's a huge red flag. That's when you say, whoops, something's not right here, because that's not the way you react during an emergency. Your brain doesn't let you do that. It doesn't let you start wide and then start zeroing in on what the problem is. So one of the most important things that I always look for and pay attention to are the things that are missing. And what's missing here is emotion, true emotion. There's no terror here. There's no horror. There's no, listen to me. You got, I need some help. None of that. We don't hear any emotion in the background. If something like that, if there's a monster in the backyard, somebody's going to be hollering. And if your mother's in the house, which we saw in the video, which we see later on, you may hear her screaming. Somebody to keep an eye on mom. There's a lot of things that are missing from this. We're not hearing the things we're supposed to be hearing. We're not hearing him say, send somebody over here. I need some help, which is the reason you have 911. And that's why you call, because you need help. What do you think about that?
Love it. And I completely agree. I think even on an intuitive level, we're missing that panic. And there's even more clues to the lack of panic. For example, the responder gets to complete her initial sentence. She's like, what's going on over there? He lets her finish that sentence, then pause, then he starts to talk. Whereas it's not like he cuts her off to say, oh my God, hurry, we need help, we need something. So she finishes her entire sentence. He starts his sentence with an intake of breath and the words, okay, lady. So we hear this, okay, lady, before he starts. Now, I'm very familiar with this okay. When we watch amateur or new magicians perform, we very often hear this okay right in the beginning of their presentation. So you're going to see something like, okay, so I have some cards here. Okay, I got some coins here. And this okay is kind of a really quick, here we go, pay attention. I'm starting now. So this okay is a nervous beginning of presentation. Now, what's interesting about this is in French, we also see this a lot. So in French magicians, I very often see them start with alors or donc, which is like a so. It's kind of like a transition of like, so here we go. But whatever language this person speaks, I wonder if that's baseline, to start with this kind of donc or okay or this so, whatever it is. So maybe it's normal for him to start with that, or he needs a second to collect his thoughts. It's possible. I'm not saying it's for sure deception, but it's bizarre how he starts with, okay, lady. The next thing that caught my attention is something that I've heard you guys talk about. Greg talks about this a lot. Joe Navarro has written about this. And it's basically, he talks about this vessel falling, right? This thing fell. And then he goes, and then, and starts talking about these aliens that he's seeing. But there's a lot missing between those two things. Like, what is that and then? So, and then is called a verbal bridge. It allows us to hide chunks of a story, right? If I say, I was at the office and then I drove home, I could hide stuff in that. Like, what's going on between the office and home? So maybe he's just trying to get to the punch. I understand that. But it's just so, like, what happened to the vessel? Where'd the vessel go?
That's why I think there's been a time lapse in this. That's why I think this has been squished down to, there's a phone call. Here's the 911 call. But they don't tell us how long it was since the event happened. before this guy makes the phone call. So I think there's a lot of time in there. This guy's creating time, like you were saying earlier, with a verbal bridge, and then, but I think that's why there was time between those things. A lot of times, what you'll do in an interrogation when you see that, you'll say, "Hang on just a minute. Let's talk about the end then." So what'd you do? You went in the store. Tell me what happened. We did this, and then I went over this. So let's talk about the and then. And you get in there, you start. It's like a little micro interrogation. You get in there and you start prying into those little things and see what's going on in that time they've created.
Absolutely. Love that. And the reason that's great also is because things are going to start to get very clear, because someone who actually experienced something, if you go, hold on, let's go here and work our way back. Okay, but now let's jump to this point and move our way forward. Somebody who actually lived that can do that, no problem, because in their head they go, okay, I can go right to that moment. Whereas somebody who made it up is going to have such a hard time navigating that because they have to remember this narrative that they completely made up.
And that's why you always hear he knows the story backwards and forwards, because as the story goes along, the sections we went here, we started here at this point, and then after that, this happened. These are all connected by emotions. So when something happens, so that's why it's easy to flow. Yeah, what a lot of times what I call loping, we kind of lope right along and you talk about whatever it is. But when it's what you want to do is you never say to someone, all right, well, let's start at the beginning or at the end and go forward. You have to sneak it in on them when you do that, because it's a great tactic to use. You can't say, well, let me start from the end and go back to the beginning. You have to start somewhere toward where they at the end and say, what happened before that? What happened just before that? You said you went to this place, then you scooch down here and go, so what happened when you were down at this place? And so you go backwards without giving them the heads up that you're going backwards. That's a key. It's a great tool in interrogation.
In the beginning, she says that they've tried to contact them, this family, and they're not taking calls. They're not answering any questions. And for me, that's kind of bizarre. You're calling the police. You're willing to talk to them when they show up. You saw something unique. Why aren't you getting this story out there? So is someone trying to silence them? Is it by their own choice that they don't want to talk about this? I don't know, but I have some questions there. Let's keep going to see where that goes. But before we do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more behavioral analysis and practical psychology content. Speaking of subscribing, at the request of some of the subscribers, I recently turned memberships on the channel. It will not affect at all the activities on the channel as they stand. It just adds a couple of perks for those of you who are interested. You get a little custom badge that evolves with time. So I will leave a link in the description with more details on that and the perks that you get for those of you who are interested in becoming a member of the Behavioral Arts YouTube channel.
Okay, where is this on your property?
In my backyard. I swear to God, this is not a joke. This is actually, we're terrified of it.
So there's two people or two subjects that are in your backyard?
Correct, and they're very large. They're like 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 foot. I don't know. They look like aliens to us. Big eyes. They have big eyes, like I can't explain it. And big mouth. They're shiny eyes and they're not human. They're 100% they're not human.
So Scott, I have a big question for you that I love to ask interrogators or behavioral analysts, and it's the following. We hear in there he says, swear to God. We get this swear to God. And I've known a lot of interrogators who give quite a bit of importance to a sudden appeal to religion. When out of the blue, because he hasn't set up until this point, I don't have a baseline on this guy, but he hasn't set up until this point, and all of a sudden we get this swear to God out of nowhere. A lot of interrogators give that importance, but I've spoken to some who don't. What are your views on that? Is that something you take note of? Is it something you care about? What do you make of when somebody evokes religion?
Okay. Quite often when there's no reason to bring up God into it. Why would you bring up God? I wouldn't think, you wouldn't have to swear to God to have you believe me, because I'm telling you the truth. I wouldn't need to do that. I wouldn't feel the need to do that. A lot of times you'll hear that they'll lean on that to say, I'm a God-fearing person. A lot of cons start off with that. They'll tell you how religious they are and how much they love God and how Jesus and them are really tight. Well, when somebody brings up, I swear to God really quick like that, that's one thing. If they say, I swear to God, that's when I think, let's take that a little more seriously. Most of the time I just throw it out because it's just a lot of people say that. We don't have a baseline on him yet that's worth anything. So like you were saying, you're right. It's tough to say. Does they say it every 5 minutes or every 3 sentences? What's happened with this guy? So in this case, it's kind of slung out there. So it sounds like he's kind of It sounds like he uses it quite often because there's no punch on God. You know, he didn't say, I swear to God. He said, I swear to God, we didn't do whatever. Just swearing.
Yeah, totally agreed. So there's two contexts in which I almost ignore swear to God. One is if I feel like it's something the person says a lot as a figure of speech, and there are people out there, swear to God, swear to God, swear to God, they just say that a lot. So I'll ignore that. But also, there's another context in which I pretty much ignore this, and it's when someone is either being not believed, like someone is telling them, I don't believe what you're saying, or they fear not being believed. He's making a phone call about an alien. So even if this is happening, he knows that this woman may not believe him. So it seems reasonable to me that there will be, I swear to God, like I know this sounds crazy. You know, I wouldn't believe it myself, but swear to God it's real. So yeah, in certain places I go, that was weird, that didn't belong there. But if someone says it a lot, or they're talking about something that's hard to believe, there I give less attention to it. So yeah, I'm okay with it here.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's almost thrown out. You know, it's like part of the, I know it's crazy. Yeah, I swear to God this happened. So yeah, I would agree with that. She has to ask too many questions about what's happening. This guy should have puked all this up right out of the gate. And it should have focused on, there's a monster in the backyard. There's an alien in the backyard. There's something in my backyard. And he, again, what's missing is the emotion that the threat is there. He's not focused on the threat. He says it's still back there. He says they're still back there, but he doesn't know exactly where. If there's an alien in your backyard, man, if something like that happened, you know exactly where that thing was. You know exactly where it was because that's the threat. And your brain goes, where's the threat? Let's keep an eye on that. Somebody walks up to you with a gun, sticks it in your face. You don't see their face. It's really tough to describe somebody that stuck a gun in your face because you're looking at the gun. Your brain goes where the threat is. And he's not focusing enough on the threat. He's not saying, you got to get over here. You know, bring the army, bring somebody. There's these guys from outer space, man. I don't know. This is really starting to sound loose.
Let's talk about two quick things. First, I want everyone watching to put a pin in one of the statements that he said. He said 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot, I don't know. So there's this range. We have this range and he's uncertain. The other thing I want to talk about in this phone call is the structure of story. So there's a great book about deception called Lie Spotting by Pamela Meyer. This is a terrific one. I go to this quite often. I'll leave a link in the description for that one as well. And in this, she talks about how, as a generalization, truth tellers and liars tend to structure a story. Now, please don't take this to mean that this is always. Like if this happens, you always know someone's telling the truth or being deceptive. This is just a benchmark, and it's a pretty good one. So truth tellers will often give you a very quick prologue. They kind of breeze through it to set the scene. Then they get to the main event and focus a lot on that. That's the main thing. That's where they would focus the most. And then with truth tellers, you get a little bit of an epilogue, like what they felt afterwards. So again, in this case, it's somewhere out there, I'm scared, please send help. So you would get that little bit of an epilogue. Again, as a generalization, liars tend to shift things around a little bit. You get a big prologue because this is the part where they can be honest. So they take a lot of time setting the scene and give you details there because they feel like they're almost getting truth credits. You know what I mean? Like, I could be honest about this part. Then again, as a generalization, they quickly breeze over the main event. This is the part where they don't want you asking too many questions, so they give it to you really quickly, and usually it lacks emotional depth, and very often liars don't have an epilogue. They can't tell you what happened afterwards because the thing never happened. So that's usually a pretty big sign if they don't give you the afterthought of what they thought afterwards. Now, if we look at this story structure, it's not that obvious. We do have a pretty big prologue where he's saying, I was in the backyard, I was working on the car, you know, I'm a big yard with my brother and my dad. That's a little too much for me. The main event isn't bad though. We're getting some emotion there. You know, he's saying we're terrified. He's saying, you know, I saw this. Like he's talking quite a bit about this alien. So that main event is quite elaborate. And then there isn't much of an epilogue, but I wouldn't expect one because this is happening in real time. The monster is still there. So that structure is a little tricky, but that prologue is just a little bit too much for me. The other thing Pamela Meyer talks about in the book and quotes a few studies to back this up is that liars often lack sensory experience of the story that they're telling. And as a mentalist, I could tell you this is quite often the case. So as a mentalist, Scott, you've seen me do my thing when I do my show, the mind reading stuff. You, by the way, you have the best reactions to mentalism and magic.
I don't know, man. That stuff. It freaks me out, man. I can't believe that, because we were doing just before this, we were like, I was showing him my card trick, right? So I have this card trick where it's only worked 3 times since like 1995. I say, pick a card, any card, and they'll pick a card out of it. As I'm leaving, I always say 3 of hearts. And 3 times since in the last 25, 30 years, it's been 3 of hearts. And those people lose their minds, right? So I told Spidey, I said, hey, man, when I come on, get a pack of cards. So he gets a pack of cards. Says, I'm ready. I said, okay. I said, pick a card, any card. He picks a card. I said, is any card you want me to show it to you? I said, don't show it to me. I said, so you know what it is? He said, yeah. I said, 3 of hearts. He's like, no. So I was like, and I explained to him that I do it all the time. I've done it 400 times since then. And it's only worked 3 times. So then what he does is this. Well, let me show you one. Hand to God. He does the same card trick, my trick. And he knew the card, I guess, twice. Not that I didn't believe him the first time, but I said, see it again. It's unbelievable. Some of that stuff you do, man, is really freaky. I know it's mentalism and all that.
So you literally just thought of a card twice, and I knew what it was.
Yeah.
No questions. You didn't write it down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You didn't even take it out of a deck.
So that was pretty, that was fascinating. That really was. That really was. So if you ever see him out somewhere, if you ever see Spidey out somewhere, get him to do that trick. Get him to do it for you, because it's really freaky. Then get him to guess your PIN number for your bank. That's when it's not funny anymore.
With mentalism, often what happens is, like, in my show, I might tell someone, okay, tell me a story that's true and then one that's not, and then I'm going to figure out which one it is. This is the type of thing we often see mentalists do. And I've often noticed that when someone's making something up that didn't happen, it's often lacking sensory description. I saw this, I felt that, I smelled this. They're telling you more of like a storybook version, like they're trying to paint a picture, but it's lacking that experience. In this case, I feel like we got quite a bit of what he was feeling in that moment. It may not have been enormously, but there was enough for me to go, the language sounds like he is, to a certain degree, reliving something. So it's somewhere in the middle. It's not quite him painting a picture, and it's not quite him fully experiencing it, but it has notes of each. So it was really interesting for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think something happened. I think maybe they did see that thing, something bright or whatever crash out of the side of their eye or whatever. And then maybe they did hear a bang, and maybe they did hear a crash and all that. But I think that's when you get to the point at that section, that's when things start. That's when we get the end ends. So they start creating time, or the guy starts creating time in there and starts putting, I don't know. I'm not going to say I hate to say he's making stuff up, but boy, this sure sounds, this story has a lot of holes in it so far. It's not looking good.
We're going to keep going, but that's pretty much exactly where I'm at as well. I think something happened, and this reminds me of like in elementary school when a whole bunch of kids run up to the teacher and they're all worked up and they go, and then this, and then that, and then that, and then this. But what you're getting is one spokesperson to convey a shared experience. So something happened. He said, oh, did you see that? There's a thing in the truck. Oh my God, something moved over there. And so I think I heard something. And they're just compiling all this and confabulating this story that's a little bit of here and a little bit of there, and I think becomes a for sure, and I might have becomes an I did. And I think this guy is the designated teller to the police of all these elements that came together and are transforming into a story.
Yeah, because when we start looking at the video, we're going to see some things missing from that, which is exactly what you're talking about. The things that are missing from this situation that we should be seeing.
An hour after that bright light, officers meeting up with the caller and his family.
What'd you see?
It was like a big creature.
A big creature?
Yeah, like around 10 feet tall.
I'm not going to BS you guys. One of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious. Did you see anything land in your backyard, or?
They see like a big, that's what they say. They see like a big something with light.
Scott, I have a question for you.
Okay, what is it?
So I saw, as the police officer was approaching the family, that the gentleman on the left crossed his arms. And I read an article online that said that if someone suddenly crosses their arms in a conversation, it's because they're being deceptive. So for sure, this kid is being deceptive as the cop is coming, because we see him cross his arms, right?
Well, let's talk about that, because like we always make fun. Well, we don't. I shouldn't say we make fun of people that say that.
I make fun of it.
But you have, well, I do too, but I don't want to call anybody out specifically, because we call those the Google body language experts. They just Google stuff and they go out and tell everybody they're an expert. you know? So the thing is about crossing your arms. Quite often, most people, they'll read somewhere, they'll see it in a movie or they'll see it in a magazine. That crossing your arms means that you're turned off. You're not into what that person has to say. You're not into what's happening. And that's an absolute. That means every time you see that, it means one specific thing. And there are no absolutes. This means it could mean I'm cold. It could mean it's more comfortable for me to be this way, to put my arms this way. It could mean a million different things. And 90% of the time when you're in a situation like this, it means absolutely nothing. There are no absolutes. Just because somebody scratches their nose, you've always heard, oh, that's deceptive. I mean, no, it doesn't. Not at all, not even a little bit. You look for things in clusters. If you see one thing, a little shoulder shrug, and then they back up a little bit, and their voice gets quieter, that's a cluster of three things. So you could say, something might be up here. It doesn't mean they're being deceptive. It's just you say, I'm going to start paying attention to what's going on here because I saw three things that suggest there may be something going on here, that there's an issue here.
That's terrific. Couldn't agree more. Now, we could take note of it in this case because there's a change. He's standing one way, the cop approaches, and he crosses his arms. So maybe, it might be a small question mark to go, okay, something changed there. But like you said, crossed arms, sometimes it's just comfortable. It's just more comfortable to stand that way. You know, we're not seeing like a hard gripping like this. We're not seeing a self-hug. We're not seeing him turtle inwards. There's not much else going on. I want to note that now the 8 or 9 or 10 feet from earlier has become 10 feet. And this is what I was talking about earlier. I think there are elements of this story that are evolving. There is a ton of research, we know this, that with time, our memory becomes less and less reliable. As we try to think back, things change, things shift, our imagination adds things, other stories come in and add things. Our memory is built for survival, not accuracy. So especially in cases like this, where there's a whole bunch of people inputting information. So I find it interesting that on the phone, he's going 8, 9, 10 feet, I don't know. And now we've gone to the most extreme of that range. Now we're at 10 feet. I mean, he does say around, but it's still like we're more confident about that higher end of that bracket.
Yeah. And another thing that we're missing here, nobody's looking around for this 10-foot monster. If there's a 10-foot monster and because nobody's talked about him leaving, nobody said, well, the thing took off, they climbed back in. We're on the impression it was, what are we supposed to think? Nobody's looking around. Not one person in that video is looking around. Not one person's keeping an eye on their mother. She came out last. And they're all sort of far apart. When there's a threat, you sort of get to, you group up a little bit because that's what we do as humans. Your brain goes, there's something wrong here, man. Look out. Let's keep an eye on what's happening. We don't see any of that here. They're not looking for the threat. They're not looking for this 10-foot monster that was in the backyard a few minutes ago. So that's something else that really, that's another big hole in their story there.
Great point. And another thing for me is I'm going to go ahead and assume that gentleman in the background is the father. Because, I mean, this is pretty late night, so it's unlikely to have a whole bunch of house guests. And he's describing this scene by saying, this is what they said. So they saw this thing fall from the sky, the vessel with the lights. This is what they said. So he's putting it on them. So he was there as well. He was on site. If it is the father, he was working on the car with them outside, and he didn't see this thing. It's kind of weird. Like, how close was it and how loud was it that he's going, no, they're the ones who are saying this. I didn't witness this. Wouldn't he have? I mean, they're going to go on to describe some pretty specific things. Wouldn't he have seen that? And another thing is this. Why is the dad focusing on the vessel? Once again, you keep coming back to this, and I fully agree. There was, and probably still is, a 10-foot monster either in or around our house. Why is the father focusing on what they saw fall out of the sky? That's not the emergency. The emergency is there are aliens here. That's like, let's say your house is being burglarized, right? And the cops get there. You're not going to tell them the car that the burglar showed up in. Oh, Scott said it was a red Honda Civic. No, tell me about the thing that's more urgent. So why isn't the father, first chance he gets, saying, yeah, look, we saw this alien. They saw this alien. It's still around. Let's go find the thing.
One of the witnesses, a young man named Angel, has stated when the brothers looked into the yard where the object landed, that spot was obscured and blurry, as if by unknown form of camouflage. He got a good look at one of the creatures, he said, a greenish-grayish being with large eyes and long legs. He says he could hear its deep breaths. The family says they also saw men in suits and sunglasses driving in a car with government plates cruising slowly passed the house in the following days.
What we're hearing here is different than what we're seeing that was written. What the phone call guy actually said, or what was reported actually says. So if you'll read what's being said and listen to the narrator, to the news guy, they're not two completely different things, but they don't quite lock up with each other. And that's just one of those little bitty, all these things when you conflate a story, when you exaggerate something, you're trying to make a specific point or look a specific way. You just pepper little things in there with it to make it shinier, make it smell better, make it look better. And that's what this is happening here. I think from the beginning, when we've heard the news people talking, they're trying to make it look a specific way and look, here's what happened. It crashed in the backyard. These things crawled out. They're crawling over the house, and the kid sees them and does this. And it's not that, but that's the picture it leaves in your mind. As an entrepreneur, when I train entrepreneurs in pitching, that's what the key is, to build a picture in their mind that they can pop out of their head and give to somebody else as you're talking about what you're pitching. So when that person goes home and they talk to their wife or their husband, they go, "You're going to spend $1.2 million on what? You're going to invest in what?" They have to be able to pop that little picture out and then put it in their head. So it has to be very clean and clear. And that's what the news guy is doing. He's making this very clean and very clear that something crashed in their backyard and they got out and these guys saw it. It sounds like the whole family saw it, but obviously they didn't. They didn't see it crash. They went to the backyard and saw this fuzzy situation or blurry situation there. It's just being enhanced. They're enhancing the story so it makes a better story. So that's bugging me too. This thing just isn't sounding right. One more thing is when he's talking about being so close to the alien that he can see it breathing and hear it breathing. There's no terror there. How long are you going to stand there when you run up on something like that and you can see it and hear it breathing? That's going to scare you to death. You're going to leave. And that's going to be one of the first things out of your mouth. When you call 911, there's a monster in the backyard. That's where your focus is going to be, not where you're out in like you were saying, right out of the gate, Spidey, right out of the gate. When he goes wide and starts bringing it into what happened. This thing, I want to believe these guys so bad because there's got to be other things going on out there. There's got to be aliens. There's got to be stuff going on. But in this cat's backyard, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure about this right now. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. And you touched on the fact that like if you were close enough to see the thing breathe, like that's terrifying, and that would be in that phone call. For me, it's also very unclear how close he was to this thing, right? Because on the phone call, it seems like it was off in the distance. One was in the truck, one was by the truck. Now all of a sudden we have this quote where he can hear the thing breathe. That's close as heck. So quoting him here directly on the screen, but it's unclear when this happened. But again, it's what I said earlier. In time, this story became a lot more concrete, and we're seeing that evolve. The phone call is different from when the cops show up, which is different from this quote that we have. Yet, if we think back, the father didn't even see the aliens. He didn't even see the vessel. He's just saying, these guys saw a vessel. Now, all of a sudden, we have an alien within feet of the person who's telling the story. Further, why aren't there any pictures or videos of this? So one of them is saying, all right, I'm going to go call the cops. And on that phone call, we're hearing him say, it's still there. Like these things are still there. Why at no point in this whole thing did somebody grab a phone and record this? So that was my main question. At some point in the report, they said, the reporter said that he spoke to Angel, who said he has footage, but he's not showing anyone.
We've been told by Angel in multiple phone conversations that he shot video of the creatures. We haven't seen it, and we don't know anybody else who's seen it yet, so maybe he'll release it at some point.
So he's not showing anyone, he's not answering questions. And Scott, I don't know if you heard, but there's government cars with people in suits and sunglasses driving on. The men in black are there. The men in black are circling the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, this starting to sound like a movie. They're adding stuff it's too much at this point. And that the guy that's with the white hair that's talking, I've seen this cat before, man. Most of the time, this guy, no matter what the UFO sighter says, this cat backs him up, and he's saying, well, where's the footage? If you've got it, maybe we'll see it. So I don't know.
Even the believer is skeptical.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe he's just waiting and he's being nice about it,
Scott, let me ask you this. You literally train government and law enforcement in nonverbal communication. If you were going to send a car of agents to survey a neighborhood, would you tell them to wear sunglasses and suits?
No, they'd be in, and they'd look like they were looking for a yard to mow. That's what it would look like. So nobody
Exactly.
knew what they were doing. Nobody drives around like that except in movies. Who does that? Nobody does that. So
Yeah.
it's this isn't right, man. This doesn't smell right. And I got a big nose. I would know.
So Scott, I think we peppered this in throughout the analysis in looking at this, but like in a nutshell, quickly, what are your final thoughts? What do you think? Is this something we're getting that's truthful, or is there some deception here according to what you feel?
I see a little bit of everything in this. So I think something happened. I think they saw possibly what the cop saw on his camera, on his body cam. They probably saw something happen. They probably heard something heard something crash or make a bang. But after that, I'm not sure because their dad was supposed to be with them. But where was dad? He's coming out saying, they saw this stuff. And nobody talks about when it left. It's not there. No, and then what happened when it left? Nobody says that. And again, nobody's looking for the threat. That's what bugs me. Nobody's addressing that. Nobody's pointing. Nobody's looking around. Nobody looks nervous. Nothing. They're just all just standing there talking to the cop.
Yes, sir. I'm with you on that. So again, I think it's all about frequencies. I think the moment they saw that thing out the sky, these are people who are prone to believe in aliens and things like that. So they saw that and they set their mind to a certain frequency. Something weird is going on around here. From that point in time on, they were more tuned in to, if we go out at night in my backyard and we're tuned into that frequency, something's back here, a little rustling, a little movement, we're gonna think that that's all connected to each other because we're looking for that thing. So I believe that's what it is. I believe, like you said, exactly, something happened. They were tuned into that frequency. Something's going on. Oh my God, what's going on? From that point in time on, something could have happened. I think something did. I think they saw something, a movement, someone, and they just started adding to the narrative. Oh, it's pretty tall. It might be 8 foot. Half an hour later, it's 10 feet. A couple of days later, I saw it breathe. I heard it on the roof. So all these different things are coming in that weren't quite there during the phone call. So I think that's exactly what this is. Of course, neither of us know. We don't know. Could this be real? Could there have been aliens in their backyard? Could it be that government agents came and covered it up, got rid of the vessel? Could it be that someone's asking them not to talk? That's why we can't see the video. It's all possible. I think that this is based in truth, but it's not entirely what happened.
And you know what else I didn't think of? That just hit me. If this cat had video of this, that'd be the first look. Here's what it looks like. They'd be showing video of it. He would say, here's what it looks like. Here's what's going on back there. Nothing. Nobody. And that it's like even on the body cam, the guy would be saying, hey man, look, this is what it looked like. This thing's dang 10 feet tall. Check this out. No, nothing. So
great call. That's so good. That's brilliant because you could tell like the news reporters you don't want to show it because the government is silencing them or something, fine. But why didn't he show the cop the moment the cop got there? Brilliant. That's why you're here. That's why everyone needs to go buy this book. Scott, I want to thank you so much for joining us. This has been a long time in the making. First time on the channel. I don't think it's the last time because I had a blast. So thanks so much for being here, man.
Thanks for having me because we've been trying to do this for a while and I really appreciate you having me. This was fun. And we'll do it again. Anytime you want to do it, just let me know. We'll do it.
Boom. So there it was, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that. This was certainly quite different from other videos because a big chunk of what we had was auditory, but I still think there's enough clues there to see that something about this story is evolving. Once again, I'm not saying that this didn't happen. It's impossible. However, there are just a couple of things there that make me very curious that I would want to personally ask more questions about, particularly around those missing time gaps and these inconsistencies as the story evolves. But let me know in the comments. To some of you, you might look at this and go, no, that's enough for me to believe that there could have been something more going on back there, that, he seems pretty convinced in that phone call. And I wouldn't disagree. There is quite a bit of conviction when he's talking on that phone. The emotion may not be there, but in that sensory explanation, there is quite a bit of conviction. So let me know in the comments what you think. Do you believe there's truth to this, or is this just a story that snowballed out of control? Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on the next one.